Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Marriage, Money, and Mindset. We're your host, I'm Jared.
And I'm Alexis.
And welcome back to Marriage, Money, and Mindset, episode 22. Episode 22, we are still talking about the real estate investing series. This is part four of the series. If you're new, returning, or if you're new, first of all, we want to give thanks to the new subscribers on IG and on our YouTube channel. Thank y'all. We're creeping up to, I think, about 270. So yeah, we got some new guys. We appreciate y'all. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing, and also please consider subscribing or following us on Instagram. We also want to thank y'all for commenting and watching the last episode on calculating cash flow. We hope y'all got value out of that. If you haven't seen that episode, we expressed how you should be able to calculate cash flow, for your deals. And we even used one of our deals as an example. So highly recommend y'all go back and watch that episode if you haven't. That's probably going to be one of the most important episodes in this series, in my opinion. So yeah, anything you want to announce before we kick it off?
We did forget to give you guys homework last week. We want you guys to go on the MLS or like on Zillow or Realtor and look up some deals, some properties for sale, and work the numbers. So last week we talked about calculating cash flow. So you can use that formula that we gave, the NOI and the cash on cash return, and figure out some of those deals on there.
Yeah, just play around. That's a
with
good way to practice. That's what I had to do, or that's what we did before we even, I got to the point where I know for a fact if it's going to be a deal or not based on, purchase prices for the most part, like how much per door you want to spend. But of course that comes with experience. But, practice, definitely look at, hundreds of deals, run numbers and see if it's a deal or not, So yeah, that's a good idea, guys. And we did forget to tell y'all that. So, but anyway, let's kick it back off. So look, we are not financial advisors, okay? What we're talking about is just for educational purposes only. And today's episode is going to be about buying your first deal, okay? Now, this is going to be for a cash flow strategy. If y'all been tuning in, we discussed two different ways you can invest in real estate. There's cash flow and then there's capital gains, right? So, of course, the cash flow strategy is where you buy and hold the real estate and rent it out. The capital gain strategy is where you buy a property, fix it up, flip it, wash and repeat, or rinse and repeat, right? So the reason why we're talking about the cash flow strategy is because that's what we do, guys. We don't do capital gains. We've never done it, and probably won't, to be honest. Just because
nothing against it. It's just a different niche.
It's just not our strategy. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now there's 6 steps that we want to hit on when buying your first deal that you should pay attention to. And again, this isn't the end all be all steps. This is just a good 6-step process to know when you're buying your first deal what to expect, guys. Okay. So let's kick it off with step 1, right? So assuming you have already established your entity, your EIN, your bank account, credit card or credit accounts, you have your capital, you have your reserves. Of course, you want to find a deal and know your numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so one way to, like Hershey explained at the beginning of the video, for your homework, look on the MLS, which stands for the Multiple Listing Service. That's where homes that are for sale, you can go to Zillow is a resource, Realtor is a resource,
LoopNet.
LoopNet, exactly. Okay, so that's where you want to go and look for real estate sales, right? Make sure you worked out your numbers and calculated what the potential cash on cash return, ROR, would be. So again, if you haven't seen the last episode, we discussed what ROR means, rate of return. You want to make sure those numbers are going to work before you even consider making an offer on the deal, right? And we're not going to get into, explaining what ROR is on this episode. We did that on the last episode, guys. So if you want to know what it is, go back and watch episode 21.
Another thing I'll add to step 1 is making sure your credit is good. So, you want to get the best mortgage rate that you can get. So just make sure to work on your credit before.
Credit report does play a role. That is good information, guys. But again, credit can always be repaired too.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, whatever the rates are is going to be what it is. Like even with a perfect score today, you're still going to be paying a premium.
Yeah.
Just because that's what the rates are. But yeah, she does make a good point, guys. And real quick, one more time, we'll mention calculator.net. That's a resource you can go to use to calculate your principal and interest payments. So when you go to calculator.net, there's an amortization calculator. Click on that, type in your information, and it'll give you an estimate of what your P&I will be. So that's step one. So let's tell us about step two.
Okay, so step 2 is getting your pre-approval letter. So you want to make sure to find a lender and go ahead and make sure that you're pre-approved so you know how much you're going to be approved for.
Right.
So you're not looking for houses that are out of your price range.
Yeah, that's one reason why. And then, of course, also for buyers, sellers often prefer buyers who already have secured their financing with a lender. So, yeah, it's important to go ahead and have that knocked out, have that already ready to go before you even consider making an offer. That's usually one piece. That's one tangible item you will have to have in most cases, okay? So get your pre-approval letter from a credit union or a bank, right? Step 3, guys, making the offer, all right? So once you knocked out step 1 and 2, step 3, here we go. So when making an offer, you will be using the seller's real estate agent or your own real estate agent, right? To make it too. So usually, like, if let's say you're new to the game, you don't know anyone that's an agent that can assist you with buying real estate, that's okay. Usually properties for sale already have a listed agent on the property, right? So you can literally just contact whatever number is listed for that property, whether it be on the MLS. Usually they have signs in front of those properties. You can call the number on the sign. It's something as simple as a Google search sometimes as well. You know, you can Google search that property. There's going to be a way you can contact whoever's listed on that property, or if it's for sale by owner, you can call the owner themselves to make your offer, right? So of course, you know, it will be a contract with the terms written out on that real estate to that real estate agent that's going to be presented to the seller to sign by both parties. So of course, there's going to be a contract when you're making an offer. Okay, so it's not just as simple as if this property is for sale, you say, hey, I'm willing to pay this amount. It doesn't work that way. You got to actually have a contract written out, right?
Yeah, it's not monopoly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, and what we want to do next is actually talk about that contract, right? So we're going to list about 10 items on the contract that you need to get familiar with, right? We're not going to go too deep. I just want to really just hit on them and keep it moving, right? Okay, so of course, offer to purchase, right? That's basically going to be what you're willing to offer for that property, right? So if they're asking $150,000 for the property, do you want to offer $150,000 or do you want to come in a little lower at $140,000, whatever, right?
For investors, usually you run your numbers beforehand so you know what you want to offer to make a profit.
Yeah, you kind of have an idea of what your max offer could be, depending on what you're going to put down, of course, too, right? Want me to keep hitting on them or you want to help?
Go ahead.
All right, so look, we already touched on one part of the contract. Purchase agreement or sales contract. This is just basically a document that includes the details about the property, the purchase price, closing date, conditions, and contingencies, right? There's an earnest and option agreement. Okay, so in layman's terms, it's 2 separate checks. Once you have when you present your contract, guys, you're gonna also, if you're gonna get it signed by both parties, you wanna have an earnest deposit and an option written out as well, or option deposit. So those are 2 separate checks. Usually an earnest deposit is made out to the title company, and the option is made out to the actual seller, right? And again, those 2 prices can be negotiated between both parties, the buyer and the seller. Right. For us, on average, it's been earnest usually is around $500, and the option is usually around like $100, right? Now, the earnest can be refundable if things go south with the contract. But the option, 9 times out of 10, unless you have it stipulated in your contract, if you have that in the contract, usually the option is non-refundable and the seller gets to keep that. Right. So it's just basically showing, you know, you're willing to put skin in the game and you're serious about purchasing the property. So that's earnest and option, guys. There's a contingency addendum, which is basically clauses that they added to the purchase agreement for specific conditions such as financing, inspections, or the sale of the property, or the sale of the buyer's current property, right? So yeah, if there's, you're going to have your financing in the contract, from your lender. That's all going to be, in black and white. Everything's transparent in the contract, right?
Right.
Property disclosure form. Sellers typically provide a disclosure form listing known defects or issues with the property. So that's important to review. Financing documents, we've already touched on that, coming from your lender. The title documents, of course, this is going to be a title commitment and title insurance policy to ensure that the property has a clear title and is free of liens. So that's important. There's closing disclosures. This document provides detailed breakdown of the financial aspects of the transaction, including the closing costs and the final terms of the loan. So we touched on the closing fees before. There's a series, a series of itemized items on your in your closing fees for the seller and the buyer, by the way. Okay. A deed. The deed is a legal document that transfers the ownership of the property from the seller to the buyer. So it's just recorded with the appropriate government office, right? Now, 10 may or may not be part of it. It just depends. There's HOA. HOA is a homeowners association document. If the property is a part of a HOA, the buyer will receive the documents outlining the association rules, fees, and any pending assessments. So some properties may have, deed restrictions, things of that nature, right? So yeah, those are the 10 things to kind of look out for in a contract, guys. Whenever you're, presenting that contract to your agent or the buyer or the seller's agent, these are some things you're going to probably see in the contract, right? Okay, so let's talk about step 4, due diligence.
Okay, so you want to get the property inspected, potentially brings down the listing price. So whenever you get the property inspected, then there's going to be things that are laid out, like maybe the roof needs to be replaced. You can negotiate that in the contract.
Yeah, I mean,
for example.
Right. It's important to get properties inspected just so you know the internal issues going on, things that the naked eye probably cannot see. It's very important to hire a qualified inspector, by the way, not just some old Joe Blow who says, yeah, I inspect homes. And, you want to make sure somebody is qualified to do it. And then again, like she mentioned, if there's needed repairs, things, potential problems, any structural issues, maybe that seller potentially can either, renegotiate the terms in the contract, or they can perform these issues and have proof for you. And that way that'll settle that, right? So, but again, guys, just know when you're negotiating and buying real estate, everything's negotiable. Everything is negotiable. Just both parties have to agree, okay? But yeah, due diligence is very important. Like she mentioned, if there's any issues discovered, it can be negotiated with the seller to either remedy the problem or forfeit the contract, right? So if y'all can't come to an agreement, just cancel the contract, you lose your option, get your earnings back, right? So let's keep it moving. So step 5 is closing on the property, right? So the closing process for purchasing a real estate investment, it usually involves about 12 steps. So we're going to touch on these 12 real quick, guys. So there's escrow and title services, right? Just to sum that up, it's just a title company ensures a clear title and manages the transfer of funds of documents. So they just assist with that transaction. There's a final walkthrough. Of course, you want to conduct your final walkthrough of the property to ensure that it's in the agreed upon condition prior to closing. The loan finalization. You also want to make sure you're financing, work closely with your lender to finalize the loan documents, review the closing disclosures, which outlines the final terms and closing costs. It's just a stack of papers, guys, that y'all gonna go through when you're closing on real estate. I mean, you can sit there and read it all if you want to. They tell you to, but just know that you don't have to, guys. Just understand the main objectives of the terms and put your initials and sign. Otherwise, you'll be there all day, So it's up to you, though. Number 4, title examination. The title company performs a thorough title examination and verifies ownership. They check for liens. A lien is just a balance on the property. And they also ensure that there are no legal issues affecting the property. That is, make sure it's not in litigation or bankruptcy or something like that. Property insurance, of course. You want to obtain property insurance and proof of coverage to the lender, right? This is a requirement for most mortgage loans. Now, if you go 100% finance or 100%, not 100% finance, but 100% cash. I guess it is up to you if you want insurance, but you definitely would want to consider insurance because you want to protect your equity, right? Let's say you pay 100% cash, you don't put any flood insurance or windstorm insurance on your property. Hurricane XYZ comes through, tears your property up, there goes your equity with it, right? If you don't have insurance. So have insurance, guys. Your closing date, that's going to be coordinated with all parties. The scheduled closing date, that's the day when the ownership finally transfers, right? Self-explanatory. The closing documents, there's funding, recording of the documents, and then distribution of funds. Possession of the keys. Once the transaction is complete, the buyer takes possession of the property, and this may involve receiving keys and access to the property. And then post-closing tasks. After you close, you receive the keys, you want to update your utility accounts, notify relevant authorities of the ownership change, and address any post-closing tasks outlined in the agreement. So if, like for instance, we actually purchased a couple properties where we inherited tenants. So prior to that closing, the previous owner had to basically notify
all of their tenants that were in there already.
Right, that there's going to be a change of ownership, right? And so that's one thing, of course, if you're buying a property that's already inherited with tenants, just something to be aware of. Same thing with the security deposits, there's a transfer of that, and any, what do you call it? When you get rent in the middle of the month. I can't think right now.
Oh, the fees?
No, prorated rates,
amount.
guys. Yeah. She having a brain for it with me. But anyway, all right. So we said 6 steps. This is the last step, guys. Okay. So turning over their property to property management. If you're going to go that route, turning over to property management and lets cash flow, right?
Right.
So by carefully selecting a property manager and clearly defining expectations, you can streamline the management of your real estate investment. So we've touched on that.
In a previous video, we talked about getting a property manager. So that's basically just giving the keys over to and the responsibilities over to your property manager. So if it's not already rented out to a tenant, they're going to vet your tenants. They're going to get it rented out. If it's going to need any renovations, you guys go over what your expectations are, what the property is for make ready.
Right. Regular communication, periodic reviews help ensure that your property is well maintained and that your investment goals are met. So in that case, you want to manage the manager, in other words, right? This, like I say, guys, these steps are pretty self-explanatory, but again, some people don't know. That's why we're sharing this information. We've closed on, quite a few properties up until this point, and it's all been pretty, consistent. Every closing has been pretty consistent for the most part. So we just we want to share this information with y'all just to help mitigate, y'all's journey. So of course, if we sped through this, we apologize. Hey, but guess what? You got a replay button on your on this channel, right? So hey, just replay and watch this video all over again, right? So next week, guys, what we want to talk about is scaling. So scaling your portfolio. Currently we have 10 doors that we rent out. So of course there was a process to get there. So, and we're still scaling, by the way. We just, rates are stupid. So, we still got time. We're going to wait until we buy some more real estate. But of course, we're never going to stop. That's our goal, is to never stop. But anyway, so we're going to touch on how we scaled our portfolio to where it's currently at. And we may potentially break out the board again. I may get Hershey to write this time because my handwriting, it's not that legible, but anyway, so that'll be next week, guys. We want to make sure that we continue to give y'all, the gems that we think y'all need in order to be successful in real estate investing. So hope we gave y'all some value today. Hope we give y'all some value in the future. And like, share, subscribe, comment. Anything else you want to mention before we sign up?
No, that's fine.
That's fine. You heard it. All right, guys, we'll see y'all next week. Y'all take care till then.
Peace.